Okay, okay. So we are live right now on LinkedIn. Me and Dr. T. Ayodele Ajayi, and
Ajayi.
I am Ajayi, and I am so excited about speaking today. Just really looking forward to seeing all the different people that are going to come through in some shape or form, with their comments, with their thoughts. This is a very pertinent conversation that we're having, and we'll just wait a few minutes for more people to come on board. And I just want to say thank you for everyone that has taken the time out to be here. This is lunchtime, and hopefully you will have fun as we speak and we talk about mental health. This is live. Do you know what I mean? Like I've done podcasting before, I've done live radio, I've done all these different things, but there's no editing. You know, this is exactly what it is. Like if Amazon come, you know, you hear the bell. You know, if you know, um, if the entire region, the electric goes down, it's what you'll experience. But I am very confident that we will be all right on the night, and we'll have some fun as well. You know,
Yeah.
so I'm really encouraged that we are here and we're doing this. It is the Herman Stewart Mentoring Show, and I'm speaking to experts and getting their thoughts, getting their insights, and getting them to share on pertinent topics that impacts us as people, impact young people, impact families, impact professionals, and we just really want to create this kind of environment that is a caring environment, a supportive environment where we don't need to have any shame, we don't need to have any pride. We can really explore these things, that a lot of them that we're going through them by ourselves, and we're thinking about them by ourselves. So I want to start, and I just want to, you know, give you an opportunity to share a bit about your work. You know, you're a doctor, you know, you're a psychiatrist, you know, you know, you're a fellow you're so many different things. How did this passion start for you wanting to do what you're doing now? Where did it start? How did you embark on going into this realm of work?
Right. Thank you. I'd like to start by saying thank you for having me on the show. I feel highly honored and privileged that this is your maiden show and you've invited me to speak on mental health. So that's something that it's really something I'm not taking for granted. So thank you for having me. And
You're welcome.
so in terms of where this started from, I know it sounds like a cliche, but for as long as I could remember, I knew I'd always wanted to be a doctor. What I
Mm,
didn't know was what specialty I should settle into. So
mm,
it looks like that was always something that had been with me, and somehow I'm grateful that that's a dream that came true. That I was able to go through medical school, um, where back home in Nigeria, and I was able to attend medical school and qualify as a doctor. But then the question was then, which specialty do I settle into? Uh, I've always been interested in people's stories and importantly, also being part of their journeys. What really makes me tick is to see people go through a journey but emerge on the other side and being
mm,
part of that journey. And so psychiatry provides that opportunity where you're able to provide holistic care, look at people's physical, mental, social, and actually spiritual well being as well in a very rounded way, and to
mm.
help them at the lowest periods of their lives, hold them by the hand, almost like being a coach, and help them to get to the other side.
Okay. And for me, it's very interesting, you know, that you, as you spoke about psychiatry, and for, you know, the laymen or the lay women that don't really understand what is the difference, because, you know, we hear about psychiatrists, psychologists, counselors. There's all these different people that do different things. But in layman terms, could you give us an understanding of what is the difference between those different practitioners and what's their area of expertise?
Right. Okay. That's a very relevant question. So a psychiatrist is somebody who is primarily a medical doctor, just like your general practitioner, like your heart surgeon, like your heart doctor, or your diabetes doctor. So we are all qualified as doctors first. We then go
Okay.
ahead to do more specialist training in terms of understanding how the brain works, but also how the brain affects our mood, our behavior, and our thinking. Receiving specialist training in the diagnosis of mental illnesses and also being able to support people through those difficult periods. So that's for psychiatrists. Psychologists are highly specialist trained colleagues as well. They have a degree in psychology, but they've also had specialist training. They are not medical doctors. So psychiatrists can prescribe medication, but psychologists won't be able to prescribe medication because they are not medical doctors. So that's one area. But also psychologists are a lot more, do a lot more in terms of talking therapies, using talking therapies to engage people at the periods of their needs. Because we know that for mental problems, it's not just one approach that works. Sometimes it's medication, sometimes it's talking therapies, sometimes it's things like even social prescribing, helping people to combat isolation, to deal with debt problems, to deal with all the other issues, because all of those actually impact on the person's mental well-being. And counselors are also talking therapists. They, they they are not necessarily psychologists, but they also adopt an approach of talking therapy, usually more of an empathic listener, of just listening to people and helping them to unburden their minds.
Okay, no, that's really good, and I love the way that you've broken it down and the terminology, and in a sense, really, the terminology has to be broken down, and the depth of the specificness of these different professionals, and what I've really liked about your work from watching some of your videos, listening to you talk, is how you are able to take what is complex or what is intricate to make it accessible to everyone. And mental health is something that we all experience.
Absolutely.
And growing up, I experienced. I mean, we all experience it, but I kind of saw things in the community, and a lot of times when we spoke about mental health, it was only when people were being sectioned or people were at the extreme part of the continuum, and in a sense that kind of created a stigma, because if you start speaking about mental health, it's like you're mad, or you've gone off the chart, or so forth. But in the latter years, where people are speaking more about mental health, it's more about just the health of your mind, your thinking, and so forth. But it'd be great for you to break down what is mental health, from your perspective, and as a profession as well.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And just to say that I've been really inspired by how transparent you've been in terms of promoting this post. And I think that's really what we need in community, in terms of really bringing the elephant in the room and shining the spotlight on it and saying, actually, let's gain knowledge rather than avoid it. So, like you say, mental health is what we all have. And there is a very simple way, a very simplified way of looking at mental health is to look at it in terms of three ways of looking at it. So one of the ways to look at mental health is that mental health is brain health.
Okay.
Mental health is simply it's got to do with the health of our brain, and that how that impacts on our thinking, on our mood, on our behavior. And everyone has that. every one of us has mental health, whether we're in a state of good mental health or poor mental health. Every one of us has mental health. And what we also know is that mental health could fluctuate. It's not a static thing. It can fluctuate from one end of the spectrum to the other. I like the word you use, continuum. That's one. So everyone has mental health to start with, because in our communities, particularly in our Black communities, sometimes we say, "Oh, that person has mental health," and sometimes that brings a smile to my face, because I'm thinking, actually, every one of us, like we do have physical health, every one of us has mental health. It's like saying, "Oh, that person has an ear, or that person has a face." Every one of us have a face. So that's one way to look at it. That mental health is generic to all, but there is also common mental health problems, which is the most that we encounter. Common mental health problems are things like anxiety, depression, and they are quite common in our community. People who suffer from anxiety, who suffer from depression. It could be social phobia, for instance, the anxiety that people get when they need to go into social situations. It could be generalized anxiety, where for no apparent reason somebody is keyed up all the time. They can't just relax, or they can't just loosen up. Um, or it could be even obsessive compulsive disorder, where somebody is compulsively checking things or counting things. Their mind is always on overdrive. They need to clean things. So that's common mental disorder, common mental conditions. That's another way to look at mental health. But then there's also the one that is really uppermost in our mind, and that's the rare form of it, the extreme part of the spectrum, which we refer to as severe mental health problems, or severe and enduring mental conditions. That's in the realm of severe depression, bipolar affective disorder, what used to be called manic depression, or schizophrenia, or even enduring personality problems. Those are mostly enduring conditions that usually span for long periods of time, or possibly over the entire lifetime. But that's not also to say that because somebody has those type of conditions, that they are sentenced to a life that is not interesting, or the life that they cannot enjoy.
And I think it's important, what you just said, because some of it is around how do we manage our mental health, and the reality of it is that we all have mental health. So whether we have good mental health or we have bad mental health, but it seems like to me there is more negative connotations around the word mental health, opposing the word mental well-being. So what I would like to understand, because we're all going through different things in our lives, and at different parts of our journey, our mental health is impacted more. It could be through some of the stresses we're going through at work. It could be because of some of the insecurities. It could be because of parenting. It could be because of bereavement. It could be because of a lot of different things that we go through anyway in life, but what I would like to get more of an understanding of is when can we notice that our mental health, needs a bit more attention? When are the times that you would say that it's probably gone beyond it being normal? Because a lot of times, like, our mental health will fluctuate, and that's just a part of life. It's not a negative thing. It's not bad. But when does it go past that demarcation, or what do we do? What are the things we do that we need to pay more attention to bringing it back in the place it needs to be?
Right. Yeah, that's a brilliant question, and I think there are two of them. So I'll take the first one and then also look at the second one. So the first one is really about, at what point does this become a problem? At what point do we think that this is actually an issue? And like I said earlier, that mental health is really looking at our thinking. The mental symptoms manifest in the area of thinking, in the area of emotions, and in the area of behavior. It's like if somebody has a heart attack, we look at their heart. If they have a stroke, it's because they've burst a vessel in their brain. If they break a bone, we know where to look. So in terms of mental health, where to look would be the area of thinking, the area of emotions, and in the area of behavior. The area of behavior is usually the one that is most accessible. In terms of somebody might have a change, their appetite might change, their sleep pattern might change, they might become visibly sad on their facial expression. They might be they might be sure that they are lacking in energy, or they're just, you can just see that they are no longer their usual self. They might begin to drink alcohol. They might begin to use street drugs. They might begin to do other things, that they might become more irritable. They might they talk, when they talk, you might find that it's not that coherent, that there's just something. This is going to the extreme ends of the spectrum now. They might spend a lot more money than they usually would. All of those are features, but when does it become a problem? That's the question. So it's two things we look at. One of them is, one, the duration of the symptoms. Usually for depression, for instance, we say that those cause symptoms in terms of low mood, low energy, and loss of enjoyment of life would have persisted for a 2-week period. However, the duration might not be as important if the intensity of the symptoms is, if it's severe. And the way to judge the intensity of the symptoms is, what impact is it having on social life? What impact is it having on work? And what impact is it having on family life? So when you have symptoms in the area of thinking, in the area of emotions or behavior, and a combination of any of this, and is distressing enough and lasting long enough to cause impairment, that's not being able to function well in one's relationships, in one's marriage, as a parent, as a brother, as a sister, as a son, as an employee, as a member of a community, as a member of a faith organization or church, or even as a member of the community, then that's when there needs to be, that's when it becomes a problem. That's when it's a mental problem.
Okay. And I mean, when I think about, when you just said 2 weeks, it's like, okay, don't want to really, sign any alarms, because the reality of it is a lot of times, I mean, and I can talk just personally, being an entrepreneur, being someone that is a lot of times living with unsurety, or insecurity, or developing things that have never been done before, or creating things, or there's a lot of fluidity and a lot of ambiguity.
Absolutely.
And that can create that kind of flux of feelings, or being in a certain place for a certain amount of time, and a lot of times it's more than 2 weeks. But then I guess it's like the bouncing back, or the change of direction, or so to speak. So I guess a lot of people would be experiencing a lot of things, especially, I mean, what we've just come through concerning just the last, the previous few years, where there's been more patterns of people probably being less sociable, or being more remote, or being more virtual, and so forth, and then probably breaking out of that conditioning to get into the normal place, maybe something that is normal for a lot of people. And one of the things that it makes me think about, because there was a period in my life where I just didn't want to get up. I didn't want to come out of bed. I would stay in bed. I wasn't working at that time. That was over 20 years ago, say around 25 years ago. And I was doing my music career, but that wasn't working as I wanted it to work. And I just wanted to stay in bed, and I would be in bed, and it would be like light, and it would be like I'm trying to sleep, but I've had more than enough sleep. But it was almost like that was a season of my life. And it was only like when I got past that season of my life, then I looked and I thought, I must have been going through depression, without saying it was clinical depression, or not, not saying anything like that. But I was in a certain place where I just didn't want to come out of my bed. So I believe that there's different things that we go through, whether we're trying to do things that creates escapism, and got different behaviors that's affecting us. Okay, I want to ask a quick question. So we all got mental health, and we all go through mental health, and it's more about how is our mental health positive or negative or so forth. So what are some of the things that we can do to promote positive mental health?
Okay. So there are I think the beauty of that question is you started by saying what are the things that we can do, and the first message I would like to put out there very strongly is that there are actually things that we can do. Because sometimes when people look at mental, they think, oh, it's almost like a death sentence sort of thing, that if you have mental difficulties, there's nothing you can do about it. But there are things that we can do about our mental difficulties. If time permits me, I'll quickly touch on what are the causes of mental problems, some of which you've mentioned already. But looking at what we can do about it, the first thing is I like to make it very easy and break things down. I look at it as a 7T approach, because if you have mnemonics, then you can use them to remember things. One of them we've talked about already in terms of trust. Trust is really about not just trusting relationships that we have with other people in our lives, but also the spirituality, faith is known to be good for mental well-being. Things like gratitude. There's quite a lot of positive psychology that talks about that. Forgiveness, gratitude, all of those things are good for mental well-being. But also think our thoughts. So there's trust, but there's also thought. Our thinking. Cognitive behavioral therapists actually help us to recognize toxic thinking patterns and to do things about them by challenging those thoughts with reality. Some of us are better at it than others. Some of us have to learn it. But those are our thinking patterns come from all our childhood experiences and how we've been trained and wired. Our brain has been wired to see ourselves, to see the world, and to see others. So there's trust, there's thought, but there's also temple. Temple is a building. Like I said earlier, that mental health is brain health. So whatever deals, if we take good care of our bodies, then we're also taking good care of our mental health. Because really things like a very balanced diet, exercise particularly, exercise has been shown over and over and over again to be very positive for mental well-being, because exercise releases happy chemicals in our brains, endorphins, which actually lift our moods. And of course, the other thing about temple is sleep. Sleep is a superpower when it comes to mental well-being. And I want to say that again, because we live in the 21st century where we think that cutting back on sleep time in order to improve productivity is the order of the day. But science has shown over and over again that sleep is a superpower and that actually we can't compromise on that. That we lose productivity when we don't sleep well, and if we continue to do that, then we are putting our brain, we're compromising our brain power and ultimately compromising our mental health. And the other thing I want to say about temples is sunlight. That actually exposure to sunlight. We live in temperate countries where we have limited sunlight, particularly at these periods of the year. So that's something to think about. So we talked about trust, we've talked about thoughts, we've talked about temple, and of course the other one is time, which is also very linked to sleep. The way we manage our time. Social media is a huge one, is the elephant in the room. Being able to manage that, because there's also links showing that there's research showing that excessive social media time has been associated with depression, anxiety, and also disordered body image, particularly in young girls. So those are things that we can share with children as well. So we've talked about the fifth tier I want to talk about is trauma. A lot of people, a lot of us, maybe because of our backgrounds, have experienced trauma in our lives, and we think that the trauma will go away. We've been severely emotionally or sexually or physically, sadly maltreated as young people, or even sometimes bullied, or we've been victims of racial victimization, and all of these things happen. This is life, and we think that not addressing that, it will go away automatically. Unfortunately, those things are like time bombs. They just need the right time and they will explode. So dealing with that trauma, and the other one is dealing with our treasures. Treasures is really the quality of our relationships. And particularly, I always advise people to do a personality test. I think that's something. There are some free ones online. There's 16personalities.com, for instance. I'll just leave it at that at the moment, because I can.
Well, I mean, I'm looking at my questions. I've got so many questions. and our time is nearly running out. I mean that this is definitely a topic that could do with much more time anyway. I mean, and just your wealth of experience and your wealth of knowledge is so good. I'm so glad that you are giving us the things that we can do, you know, because the reality of it is we all have mental health, and it's just about how we take care of our mental health. And especially the part when you said about sleep, I think that that's a reality. You know, that's definitely one for me, because there's times I've been able to cope without sleep, but really it's like depleting my energy or my productivity. But it's just because I can wake up and I can go and do what I need to do. But at the same time, what you're saying is that it's a superpower, and it's a superpower that definitely I want to access much more and more. Okay, I'm going to finish. I've got one more question, because I know that you've spoke about your emotional, like having an emotional well-being plan. So I want to leave this like as one of the takeaways really for people that are listening. How can we create an emotional well-being plan, and what are, you know, if there was three things that need to be in that plan, what would those three things be?
Right. Another brilliant question. I don't know where you get these questions from, but so you certainly do a great job of them. So the framework that I use with everyone that I interact with, people that I see one to one, and everyone, my public speaking events, is this: that 60 or 70 framework is a good one. And what people need to do is to look at those 70s and say which is the most in need of attention out of all of this,
Mm,
rating them
mm,
on a scale of 1 to 10. Where am I in terms of my trust? Where am I in terms of my thinking? Where am I in terms of my temple, self-care? Where am I in terms of managing trauma? Where am I in terms of my time management? And where am I in terms of the other one is thoughts. So all of those six, where am I in terms of managing those? Which is the one, two, three, the topmost in need of attention? And out of that topmost in need of attention, which one do I want to take on now? Is it about my sleep in terms of my temple? Is it about my time management? Do I want to install something on my phone, an app that is going to help me to monitor social media time? In terms of my trust in relationships, is it that I really want to invest in my relationships and begin to have contracts with people and say, this is what, if ever you see these symptoms in me, I give you permission to engage with me on this. So it's about really what's most in need of attention and where am I going to start, and to tackle one thing at a time rather than tackle several things all at once.
wow. I've really been encouraged, and I hope that everyone that has been listening has been able to hear the truths and the reality, in a sense of demystifying some of the myths, and also the stigmas attached. I feel that this is a conversation that it's a normal conversation that we all need to have, with ourselves, with those that are close to us, because we definitely need it, and especially as men. I would say women definitely as well, and I would say, you know, men can struggle with speaking about these things, because it's as though they are seen like they're weak or they're out of control or so forth. But it's something that we need to be able to speak about. But yeah, time hasn't permitted for us to keep on going. But I want to say thank you all for joining us, joining. Thank you very much, Dr. T. Ayodele. I really I've enjoyed your time today and your expertise. And where would you direct people if they wanted to find out more about your work?
So I manage a YouTube channel that's by the same name of the organization, which I'm going to type. It's Tripart Care, which means that it's holistic care. Tripart Care. That's quite aware. And of course, I'm still an email person. It's tripartcare@gmail.com.
Okay. No, that's fine. So thank you, everyone, and thank you for coming to the Herman Stewart Mentoring Show. The next one will be in 2 weeks, and we will have Craig Pinkney with me, who will speak about the whole area of, young people and different things, around youth violence and how to, support young people and even adults in different environments and so forth. So do turn up the 23rd of November, 12:30. And I want to say thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome.